My name is Heidi, and at 32 years old, I never expected to be homeless after a Sunday family dinner. When my mother screamed at me to get out and never come back, I actually listened this time. What she did not know was that I had been silently paying their $2,200 mortgage for 3 years. The shock on my dad Richard's face when he called weeks later asking about the bank notice was something I will never forget. If you have ever experienced toxic family dynamics, give this video a like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and stick around to see how setting boundaries changed everything. Growing up in the Hamilton household was like walking on eggshells, especially around my mother Gloria. From my earliest memories, she had impossibly high expectations that seemed designed specifically to make me fail. My father Richard was the peacemaker, the one who would slip into my room after one of Mom's storms to assure me that everything would be okay. But he never actually stood up to her. He just smoothed things over temporarily until the next explosion. My family consisted of 5 people: my parents, my older brother Justin, who is 36, my sister Elizabeth, who is 34, and me at 32. As the youngest, I bore the brunt of my mother evolving disappointments. Justin escaped to college at 18, and rarely came home afterward. Elizabeth followed suit 2 years later. That left me alone with my parents, through my senior year of high school, absorbing the full force of my mother's critical nature. Every achievement was measured against an invisible, ever-shifting standard. When I brought home a report card with 5 A's and 1 B, my mother would focus exclusively on the B. What happened here? Did you not study enough? Elizabeth never got anything lower than an A-. These comparisons were constant and crushing. My choice in friends was another battleground. That Olivia girl seems shallow. I do not like how she dresses, my mother would say after meeting a new friend. And why are you wearing those jeans? They make you look heavier than you are. Comments about my appearance started when I was around 12 and never stopped. The worst fights were about my future. When I expressed interest in finance during high school, my mother scoffed. Women do not get taken seriously in that field. You should choose something practical, like nursing. But finance fascinated me the way numbers could tell stories and predict outcomes. I secretly applied to business programs against her wishes. My father worked as a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company for 28 years. He made good money enough for my mother to be a stay-at-home mom, even after we were grown. She took pride in their 5-bedroom colonial, with its manicured lawn and designer furniture. The house was her domain, her accomplishment, though she never contributed financially to it. I ended up graduating with honors in finance from Cornell University again, not quite meeting my mother's expectations, because I did not get into Harvard like she had wanted. Still, I secured a job at a prestigious financial management firm right out of college and worked my way up to senior financial advisor by the time I was 28. My clients trusted me. My bosses valued me. But at family gatherings, my mother would introduce me with, "This is Heidi. She works with money," as if my career was a hobby not worth explaining. 3 years ago, everything changed when my father was laid off during company restructuring. At 59, he struggled to find comparable employment. The severance package was generous but not infinite. My mother refused to downsize their lifestyle or consider getting a job herself. At my age, who would hire me, and we cannot leave this house? What would people think? I discovered their financial troubles accidentally during a visit home. I found my father at the kitchen table late at night, surrounded by bills, his head in his hands. When I asked what was wrong, he broke down and admitted they were 3 months behind on the mortgage and at risk of foreclosure. Without telling them, I contacted their mortgage company the next day. I set up automatic payments from my personal account for their $2,200 monthly mortgage. It was a significant chunk of my income, but I had savings and lived modestly despite my success. I could afford it, and the thought of my parents losing their home was unbearable. I never told them what I had done. My father eventually found part-time work that he claimed covered their expenses, and I pretended to believe him. Looking back, I should have recognized the signs that something was still wrong. The new credit cards my mother opened the evasive way. My father answered questions about their finances, the increasing tension between them. Their house was a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom, colonial-style home in an upscale suburb of Boston. The kitchen had been remodeled when I was in high school with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that my mother had insisted upon. The formal dining room held the mahogany table where we had gathered for tense holiday meals since I was a child. My old bedroom remained largely untouched, since I moved out a time capsule of lavender walls and academic trophies. Despite the discomfort I felt there, the house held memories. The height marks penciled on the kitchen doorframe, the dent in the living room wall from when Justin threw a baseball indoors, the window seat in the front room where I used to read for hours, escaping into stories where families actually liked each other. It was harder to leave than I expected when the time came. I visited my parents at least twice a month, despite the knot that formed in my stomach every time I turned onto their street. These visits were primarily for my father. After losing his job, his confidence had crumbled. I worried about his mental health, especially when I noticed how much the liquor bottles in their cabinet seemed to empty between my visits. The warning signs were everywhere, intensifying over the past year. My mother's criticism grew more barbed, less disguised as concern. When I brought homemade lasagna for dinner, her favorite, she took one bite and asked if I had used low-fat cheese because she could taste the difference and not in a good way. When I offered to help clean up, she would follow behind me, rewashing dishes I had already done, sighing loudly to make sure I noticed. My father retreated further into himself during these interactions. He would stare at his plate or suddenly remember something he needed to check in the garage. The once confident man who had coached my soccer team and dominated sales meetings now flinched when my mother's voice rose above normal speaking volume. He started keeping a flask in his jacket pocket. I tried everything to rebuild a connection with my mother. I brought thoughtful gifts, a cashmere scarf in her favorite blue, a first edition of the mystery novel she had mentioned wanting to read. I took her to lunch at expensive restaurants. I even booked a mother-daughter spa day for her birthday, spending $600 on treatments she complained about afterward. The massage was too hard. I told her to ease up, but did she listen? "My back is going to be bruised tomorrow," she said as we drove home, and that facial just made my rosacea worse. "I do not know why I let you talk me into these things." Nothing worked. Every gesture was met with criticism or suspicion. "Why are you being so nice all of a sudden?" "What do you want?" she asked once, as if kindness could only be transactional. My best friend Sophia saw through my forced cheerfulness when I would return from these visits. One night over wine in my apartment, I finally broke down and told her everything, including the mortgage payments I had been making in secret. "Heidi, honey, this is not normal or healthy," Sophia said, refilling my glass. "You are 32 years old, successful, brilliant, and beautiful, and you are being emotionally abused by your mother while bankrolling their lifestyle." "They are my parents," I protested weakly. "What am I supposed to do? Let them lose their house." "Maybe they should lose the house," Sophia countered. "Maybe they need a reality check. Your mom refuses to work, they will not downsize, and meanwhile you are sacrificing your own financial future. Where are your boundaries?" I did not have an answer. In our family, boundaries were seen as selfish, especially when set by children against parents. My mother firmly believed in the honor thy father and mother commandment, selectively interpreting it to mean, do whatever we say without question. The cultural expectation weighed heavily too. In our community, adult children were expected to care for aging parents. At church, at neighborhood gatherings, the worst thing you could be was an ungrateful child who abandoned family responsibilities. The fact that my parents were only in their early 60s and perfectly capable of supporting themselves with adjustments to their lifestyle seemed irrelevant against the weight of these expectations. So I continued the visits, the payments, the emotional gymnastics. I started having panic attacks the night before, seeing them, my chest tightening until I could barely breathe. My therapist suggested reducing contact, but the guilt was overwhelming. What kind of daughter would I be if I abandoned them now? What I did not fully recognize then was how my mother's resentment toward me had been growing alongside my success. Each promotion, each client commendation, each financial milestone I reached seemed to deepen her bitterness. She had given up a promising career in real estate to raise children, a fact she reminded us of frequently. Seeing me thrive in my chosen field, unmarried and child-free by choice, contradicted everything she had been taught about a woman's worth and purpose. "When are you going to settle down?" became her constant refrain. "Careers are nice, but family is what matters in the end." No one wishes they had spent more time at the office on their deathbed. The irony that she seemed to actively dislike her own family was apparently lost on her. The final warning sign came 2 weeks before everything fell apart. I had stopped by unannounced on a Tuesday evening, bringing dinner from their favorite Italian restaurant. I let myself in with the key they had given me years ago and heard my mother's voice from the kitchen. "She thinks she is so special with her fancy job and her fancy apartment," she was saying, presumably to my father. "Little Miss Perfect, always showing off. Does she think we do not see right through her?" I froze in the hallway, the paper bag of food growing heavy in my arms. "Gloria, please," my father's voice sounded tired. "She is just trying to help." "We do not need her help," my mother snapped. "We were fine before she started interfering. I raised her better than this to be so condescending." I backed away silently and left without them ever knowing I had been there. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, shaking before I could drive home. That night I called Sophia and cried until my throat was raw. "Next time will be different," I promised myself, as I had countless times before. "Next time I will stand up for myself." But old habits die hard, and the fear of confrontation had been conditioned into me since childhood. I did not know then that next time would be the breaking point for all of us. My father's 60th birthday fell on a Saturday in April. Despite my anxiety after overhearing my mother's comments, I decided to go home for the weekend to celebrate with them. I brought an overnight bag and a carefully wrapped gift box containing a Rolex watch I had spent months saving for. It was the exact model my father had admired in a magazine years ago, saying, "Maybe when I retire." With his job loss, that retirement, Rolex had become an impossible dream, and I wanted to give him something special to lift his spirits. The tension was palpable from the moment I arrived. My mother greeted me with a stiff hug and immediately commented on my hair. "Oh, you cut it again." It was finally getting to a nice length. I had actually grown it out for months, but correcting her would only lead to an argument. I had arranged for dinner reservations at an upscale steakhouse my father loved, but my mother vetoed the plan. I already made his favorite pot roast. No need to waste money at those overpriced restaurants. So we ate at home at the formal dining table, set with the good china that only appeared on special occasions. The conversation was stilted. I asked about their friends, the neighbors, my father's garden. Each topic eventually circled back to some complaint or criticism. The pot roast was delicious, I had to admit, but the meal felt endless. My father drank 4 glasses of wine and grew quieter with each one. When it came time for presents, I nervously handed over the blue gift box. My father opened it slowly, and his expression when he saw the watch was everything I had hoped for: surprise, delight, disbelief. "Heidi, I cannot accept this." "It is too much," he stammered, even as he removed it from the box and turned it over in his hands. "Of course you can," I insisted. "You deserve it, Dad. Happy birthday." My mother's face had gone rigid. "How much did that cost?" she asked sharply. "Gloria," my father warned, but she ignored him. "Must be nice to have so much disposable income," she continued. "Meanwhile, we are counting pennies for groceries." The evening deteriorated from there. My father tried to smooth things over, but the damage was done. I went to bed early in my old room, texting Sophia, "Remind me why I do this to myself." Her response was immediate. "Because you are a good person who loves her dad. Hang in there. Call if you need me." The next morning, I woke early and went downstairs to make coffee. The house was quiet, my parents presumably still asleep. As I waited for the coffee to brew, I heard their voices drifting from the study across the hall. The door was partially open and their words carried clearly. "We cannot keep doing this," Gloria, my father was saying. "The credit cards are maxed out. The property taxes are due next month. We have to tell her." "Tell her," what my mother snapped. "That we are failing. That is exactly what she wants to hear so she can swoop in and play savior. That is not fair. She would help us if she knew. I am not taking charity from my child. We will figure it out. How I am working part-time at a hardware store making a fraction of my old salary. You refuse to get even a part-time job. We are underwater, Gloria. Their voices dropped, and I strained to hear. My heart was pounding. They were in worse shape than I had thought, and my father had been hiding it from me despite my help with the mortgage. When they came into the kitchen 20 minutes later, I had made a decision. I would offer to help them create a financial plan, something sustainable that would allow them to keep their home and dignity. It was literally my job to help people in financial crisis, and I could do this for them. I waited until we were all seated with coffee before speaking. Mom, Dad, I could not help overhearing some of your conversation earlier. I know things have been tight since Dad lost his job and I want to help. My mother's face went white, then red. You were eavesdropping on us. No, I was in the kitchen. Your voices carried. I took a deep breath. Look, financial planning is what I do professionally. Let me help you create a budget, maybe look at refinancing options for the house. So now we need your professional help. My mother's voice had taken on the dangerous edge I recognized from childhood. You think we are incompetent, that we cannot manage our own affairs. That is not what I said at all. I tried to keep my voice calm, but it sounds like things are serious, and I have resources and knowledge that could help. Of course you do, she said sarcastically. Little Miss Perfect with all the answers. You have no idea what the real world is like. You have had everything handed to you. The unfairness of this statement stunned me. I had worked through college, graduated with loans I had paid off through years of careful budgeting. Nothing had been handed to me except criticism and impossible standards. Mom, that is not true, and you know it. I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I have worked incredibly hard for everything I have, and I am just trying to help. We do not need your help, she snapped, and we certainly do not need your judgment. It is not judgment, it is concern, I insisted. Dad just said you are underwater financially. The property taxes are due. Your credit cards are maxed out. These are serious problems. Problems that are none of your business, she said. This is between your father and me. My father sat silently, staring into his coffee cup. His new Rolex gleamed on his wrist, an ironic symbol of prosperity we all knew was an illusion. Dad, I said softly, please say something. He looked up, his eyes tired. Your mother is upset, Heidi. Maybe we should discuss this another time. That was when something broke inside me. After 3 years of paying their mortgage, after decades of walking on eggshells, after endless criticism and emotional manipulation, I was done being the family punching bag. There will not be another time, I said, my voice shaking. This pattern never changes. Mom attacks, Dad enables, and I am supposed to take it because we are family. Well, I am done. My mother stood up so quickly her chair tipped backward. How dare you speak to us like that in our own home, after everything we have done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Made me feel inadequate at every turn, criticized my appearance, my career, my life choices, taken financial support without acknowledgement or gratitude? Her face contorted with rage. Financial support, what are you talking about? I almost told her about the mortgage payments then, but something held me back. It would only give her more ammunition, more ways to make me feel manipulated. Nothing, I said. Forget it. No, you brought it up. What financial support? The occasional dinner out, the birthday gifts. Do you want a medal for doing the bare minimum a daughter should do? The bare minimum is exactly what I have gotten from you emotionally my entire life, I said, and immediately regretted the honesty. It was like throwing gasoline on a fire. My mother exploded. You ungrateful, selfish girl. After everything I sacrificed for you, I gave up my career to raise you. I devoted my life to this family, and this is the thanks I get: judgment and disrespect in my own kitchen. She began listing every perceived failure of mine since childhood, every time I had disappointed her, every flaw in my character as she saw it. It was a greatest hits compilation of my inadequacies delivered with venom. Something had changed in me, though. For the first time, I heard her words not as truth, but as the desperate lashing out of someone who could not face her own unhappiness. It still hurt, but differently, like an old wound being prodded rather than a fresh cut. "I am not doing this anymore," I said quietly, standing up. "I am going to pack my bag and go home." Running away as usual, she sneered. "Cannot handle the truth. The truth is that you are angry and bitter, and you are taking it out on me because I am a safe target," I said. "The truth is that I have been paying your mortgage for 3 years without telling you because I knew you would react exactly like this, making it about your pride instead of practical solutions." The room went silent. My father's face drained of color. My mother's mouth opened and closed without sound, for once speechless. Then she found her voice, and it was ice cold. "Get out." "Mom," my father started, but she cut him off. "Get out of my house," she repeated. "Get out and never come back. If you think we are such burdens, such failures, then you are free of us. Go live your perfect little life and leave us alone." I looked at my father, searching for any sign that he would stand up for me, for us, for the possibility of healing this broken family dynamic. He looked away. "Okay," I said simply. I walked upstairs, packed my overnight bag with mechanical movements, and came back down. My mother had moved to the living room window, her back to the entryway. My father stood helplessly in the hallway. "Heidi, she does not mean it," he whispered. "Give her time to calm down." "She means it," I said. "And for once, I am going to take her at her word." I walked out the front door, closing it quietly behind me. As I drove away, I glanced in the rear-view mirror at the house where I had grown up, never suspecting it would be the last time I saw it as someone welcome there. The 40-minute drive from my parents' suburban home to my apartment in the city passed in a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I did not cry. I did not scream. I just drove numb and hollow, as if someone else was controlling my body. When I arrived home, I sat in my parked car for nearly an hour, unable to summon the energy to go inside. Finally, my phone buzzing with a text from Sophia broke the trance. "How's the birthday weekend going?" "Surviving." I called her immediately, and to my surprise, my voice was steady as I recounted what had happened. It was only when I reached the part about my mother's final words that my composure cracked. "She told me to get out and never come back," I said. And then the tears came hot and relentless, and I left Sophia. I just left. "Where are you now?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "In my car outside my building." "I am coming over. Do not move." 20 minutes later, Sophia arrived with a bottle of wine and a bag from the deli down the street. She took one look at me, still sitting in my car, and opened the passenger door, sliding in beside me. "First hug, then food, then wine. Then we figure this out," she said, pulling me into her arms. I spent that night on Sophia's sofa, unable to be alone with my thoughts. The next day was Sunday, and she called in sick to her job on Monday to stay with me. By Tuesday, I had to return to work, though I was barely functional. I went through the motions with clients, my professional mask firmly in place, but inside I was unraveling. My father called several times that first week. I let each call go to voicemail. His messages were vague. "Please call me back, Heidi. We need to talk." No apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a request for me to once again be the bigger person, to smooth things over as I had done my entire life. There were no calls from my mother. After 10 days of emotional limbo, I made an appointment with a financial advisor colleague to discuss my own situation. I had been paying $2,200 monthly toward my parents' mortgage for 3 years, totaling nearly $80,000. Money I could have put toward my own home, my retirement, or simply enjoying the fruits of my hard work. "Legally, you have no obligation to continue these payments," my colleague Diane advised. "The mortgage is in their names. You are not a co-signor. You have been making a gift, essentially." "What will happen if I stop?" I asked. "They will receive notices of non-payment. Eventually, if they cannot make the payments themselves, foreclosure proceedings could begin. But Heidi, that is not your responsibility." I decided to stop the automatic payments immediately. It was both terrifying and liberating, like cutting a cord that had both connected and constrained me. The next step was finding my own place to live, a permanent home, rather than the series of rentals I had occupied since college. With the mortgage payments off my monthly budget, I could now afford to look at condos and small houses in neighborhoods I had previously considered out of reach. 2 weeks after the blow-up, I put a deposit on a sunlit 2-bedroom condo in a converted Victorian house. It had bay windows, hardwood floors, and most importantly, it was mine. No one could tell me to get out. No one could make me feel unwelcome in my own space. During this time, I also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, who specialized in family trauma. Our first session was revelatory. "What you are describing sounds like a lifetime of emotional abuse," she said, after I recounted my childhood and recent events. "Your mother exhibits classic narcissistic behaviors, and your father is what we call an enabler." "But she is not always terrible," I protested weakly. "Sometimes she can be loving, especially when I am doing exactly what she wants." "That is part of the cycle of abuse," Dr. Martinez explained. "The periods of apparent normalcy or even affection keep you hoping things will change. They keep you coming back. But has the fundamental dynamic ever really changed?" I had to admit it had not. The good periods were just lulls between storms, never representing real growth or healing. Through therapy, I began to recognize patterns I had never seen before. How my mother would create crises to pull me back when I was establishing independence. How she would undermine my confidence before important life events. How she would pit family members against each other to maintain control. "What about the mortgage payments?" I asked Dr. Martinez during our third session. "Was I enabling them by paying without telling them?" She considered this thoughtfully. "Your intention was to help, but keeping it secret did prevent them from facing reality. It allowed your father to avoid taking necessary action and your mother to maintain denial about their situation. So I was wrong to help. The thought was painful." "Not wrong. You acted out of love and concern. But sometimes helping can hurt in the long run. True help would have been working with them to develop financial independence, not creating financial dependence." The hardest part of those weeks was learning to sit with guilt without acting on it. When I would think about my parents possibly losing their home, my instinct was to rescue them, to sacrifice my own well-being to preserve theirs. Dr. Martinez helped me see this as a conditioned response, not a moral obligation. "Your parents are adults who made their own choices," she reminded me. "Your father chose not to find adequate employment after his job loss. Your mother chose not to work or adjust their lifestyle. These were choices, not circumstances thrust upon them." Gradually, the panic attacks subsided. I slept through the night more often. I stopped checking my phone constantly for messages from my father. I began to embrace the possibility that life could be different, that I could love my family without being consumed by them. I threw myself into making my new condo a home. I painted the walls colors my mother would have hated, a deep teal in the living room, a sunny yellow in the kitchen. I bought furniture that suited my taste rather than what would impress others. I created a home office where I could work on personal financial projects, including a revised retirement plan, now that I had an extra $2,200 monthly to invest. Through it all, there was a lingering sadness. Despite everything, I loved my parents. I missed the father who had taught me to ride a bike, who had slipped me extra allowance for books, who had been proud of me before my mother convinced him not to be. I even missed the mother who, in rare moments of connection, would share stories of her own childhood dreams or laugh genuinely at a shared joke. But I could not miss them enough to destroy myself in the process of loving them. That was the boundary I was finally learning to set. Exactly 3 weeks and 2 days after I walked out of my parents' house, my phone rang with my father number while I was at work. I had been expecting this call, yet was still unprepared for the rush of emotion that hit me when I saw his name on the screen. I was alone in my office between client meetings, so I took a deep breath and answered, "Hello, Dad." "Heidi." He sounded relieved that I had picked up. "How are you, sweetheart?" The casual normalcy of his greeting, as if nothing had happened, was jarring. "I am okay," I said cautiously. "How are you?" "Oh, you know, getting by." There was an awkward pause. "We have missed you at Sunday dinners." I said nothing, waiting. If he wanted to pretend everything was normal, he would have to do it without my help. Your mother has been asking about you, he continued, which I knew was a lie. If my mother had been asking, it was not out of concern. Has she? I kept my voice neutral. He cleared his throat. Well, you know how she is. She has her pride, but I know she regrets what happened. Did she say that? I asked. Another pause. Not in those exact words, no, but I know she does. My heart sank. Nothing had changed. He was still making excuses for her, still expecting me to accept the unacceptable. Dad, why are you calling? I asked directly. Can a father not call his daughter just to check in? He attempted a light tone that fell flat. After 3 weeks of silence following Mom throwing me out of the house. No, that is not just checking in. He sighed, and I could picture him running his hand through his thinning hair, a nervous habit he had had for as long as I could remember. Heidi, your mother was upset. She said things she did not mean. You know how she gets when she feels backed into a corner. I do know, I agreed. I have known my entire life. That does not make it okay. No one is saying it is okay, he backpedaled. But family is family. We have to forgive each other. Forgiveness requires acknowledgement and change, Dad. Has Mom acknowledged what she did? Has anything changed? The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. I thought so, I said softly. She is your mother, Heidi. She loves you in her way. Her way is hurting me. It always has. Another long pause. I could hear him breathing, gathering his courage for what I now realized was the real purpose of his call. There is something else, he finally said. Did you know the bank sent us a notice about the mortgage? My heart began to race, but I kept my voice steady. What kind of notice? A late payment notice. Then another. They are threatening to begin foreclosure proceedings if we do not catch up. I do not understand it. The payments have always gone through automatically. Have they? I asked. Yes, for the past 3 years. Ever since. He trailed off, and I could hear the moment realization began to dawn. Heidi, what did you mean when you said you had been paying our mortgage? The moment of truth had arrived. Part of me wanted to deflect, to protect him from the reality of how much I had sacrificed while they had taken me for granted. But I was done with secrets and enabling. I meant exactly what I said, Dad. I have been making your mortgage payments, $2,200 every month, for the past 3 years. That is why they were always on time, regardless of your financial situation. The silence that followed was deafening. That is not possible, he finally said, his voice faint. We would have known. How? You never looked at the payment details, did you? The bank statement just showed the payment was received. You assumed it was coming from your accounts. But why would you? How could you afford? He stammered. I make good money, Dad. The money you and Mom dismiss as my fancy job. I lived in a smaller apartment than I could afford, drove an older car, limited my expenses so I could help you keep your home. Because I loved you and could not bear to see you lose everything. Why did you not tell us? There was pain in his voice now and confusion. Because I knew Mom would react exactly as she did when I tried to help openly. She would see it as an attack on her pride, on your capabilities, instead of what it was, a daughter loving her parents. 3 years, he repeated, the enormity of it sinking in. That is over $70,000. $79,200, to be exact, I confirmed. Heidi, I had no idea, I thought. I told your mother I had found freelance consulting work that was covering our expenses. I was too ashamed to admit I was stocking shelves at 60 years old. The admission broke my heart. My proud, accomplished father had been reduced to creating fictions to preserve his dignity. There is no shame in honest work, Dad. The shame is in not facing reality. Does this mean? Have you stopped the payments? He asked, his voice small. Yes, I said simply. When Mom told me to get out and never come back, I took her at her word. All of it. But the house, he began, is not my responsibility, I finished firmly. It never was. You and Mom need to make some hard decisions now. Sell the house you cannot afford. Get jobs that cover your actual expenses. Create a sustainable retirement plan. All things I offered to help with before Mom threw me out. She will never agree to sell, he said, panic edging into his voice. Then she needs to get a job. Or you need to find better paying work. Or both. But Dad, I cannot keep setting myself on fire to keep you warm. I understand, he said, though I was not sure he did. What you did for us. I do not know what to say. You do not need to say anything. But I do need you to understand that things have to change. I am not coming back to the old dynamic. I am not going to be the family scapegoat anymore. Of course not, he agreed quickly. I will talk to your mother. I will make her understand. I almost laughed at the idea that he could make my mother understand anything she did not want to acknowledge. Good luck with that. Could we meet to talk about all this in person? He asked hopefully. I considered refusing. The thought of facing either of them again so soon made my stomach clench. But I also knew that written boundaries were clearer than unspoken ones. Not at the house, I said firmly. I will meet you at Riverside Cafe on Thursday at noon. Just you not, Mom. I am not ready to see her yet. He agreed quickly, thanking me repeatedly before we hung up. After the call ended, I sat at my desk shaking. I had finally told the truth and the world had not ended. In fact, for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. I arrived at Riverside Cafe 20 minutes early on Thursday, choosing a table in the back corner where I could see the door. I had prepared for this meeting with the same thoroughness I would use for an important client presentation. Dr. Martinez and I had role-played potential scenarios. I had written down my boundaries and practiced stating them clearly and calmly. Remember, you are not responsible for their emotions or reactions, she had advised during our emergency session the day before. You are only responsible for communicating your own needs and limits with clarity. My father arrived exactly on time, looking like he had aged years in the few weeks since I had seen him. His shoulders were hunched, his face gaunt. The Rolex I had given him was conspicuously absent from his wrist, and I wondered if he had pawned it already. Heidi, he said with visible relief, as if he had half expected me not to show up. Thank you for meeting me. I nodded, gesturing to the chair across from me. We ordered coffee, and an uncomfortable silence fell between us until the server left. How have you been? He asked tentatively. I have been reflecting a lot, I said, sidestepping the politeness. On our family dynamics, on my role in them, on what I want moving forward. He nodded, looking down at his coffee. I have been doing some thinking too. Tell me, I encouraged. He took a deep breath. I want to start by saying, I am sorry, not just for what happened that day, but for years of not protecting you from your mother's anger, for allowing you to become her target, for taking your support without acknowledgement. It was more self-awareness than I had expected, and it momentarily threw me off balance. Thank you for saying that I managed. After we spoke on the phone, I went through our bank records, he continued. I saw the truth. For 3 years you have been carrying us while I pretended everything was fine. He looked up, his eyes wet. I feel ashamed, Heidi, deeply ashamed. I did not tell you about the payments to make you feel ashamed, I said. I did it because I love you and wanted to help. I know, that makes it worse somehow. He wiped at his eyes with a napkin. A father should provide for his children, not the other way around. At least not when the parents are still able-bodied and capable. It is not about gender roles or traditional expectations, Dad. It is about honesty and reciprocity. I would have gladly helped you if you had been honest about your situation, and if that help had been met with gratitude instead of hostility. He nodded, accepting this. Your mother and I have had some difficult conversations since your call. I can imagine, I said dryly. She did not believe me at first, about the mortgage payments. She accused me of making it up to manipulate her. He sighed. I had to show her the bank statements, the dates of the payments, the account number they came from. And she cried, he said simply. I have not seen your mother cry in years, not since her father died. I was not sure how to feel about this. Part of me, the wounded child inside, felt vindicated. Another part felt sad that it had come to this. "Did she say anything about how she treated me?" I asked. He hesitated. "She is struggling with that part. She feels humiliated, which makes it hard for her to acknowledge her behavior." "Her humiliation does not erase my hurt," I said firmly. "No, it does not," he agreed. "Which is why I asked her to come here today to apologize to you herself." My heart jumped. What I told you, I was not ready to see her." "I know, and I am sorry. But I thought if you could just hear her out." The cafe door opened then, and my mother walked in. She spotted us immediately and headed toward our table. I felt like I could not breathe, trapped between my boundary and the approaching confrontation. "You ambushed me," I said to my father, my voice low and angry. "I am sorry," he repeated helplessly. "I thought it would be better this way." My mother reached our table, standing awkwardly beside it. She looked different, smaller somehow. Her normally perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup. Like my father, she seemed to have aged rapidly. "Hello, Heidi," she said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "I did not invite her to sit. Dad told me you were coming despite my explicit request to meet with him alone." She flinched at my tone. "Yes. I needed to see you." "Why?" She glanced at my father, who nodded encouragingly. "May I sit down?" I considered refusing, but causing a scene in the cafe would only make this more difficult. "Fine." She took the third chair at our table, perching on the edge, as if ready to flee. We sat in tense silence until the server returned to take her order. She asked for water, only her voice barely audible. After the server left, she took a deep breath. "Your father showed me the bank records. About the mortgage payments." I said nothing, waiting. "I did not know," she continued. "All this time I thought we were managing. I thought Richard freelance work was covering our expenses. I had no idea you were." She trailed off, unable to finish. "Paying your mortgage, supporting you." Being the adult in the relationship, I supplied coldly. She flinched again. "Yes." "Would it have mattered if you had known? Would you have treated me any better?" Her eyes widened at my directness. "I do not know. I would like to think so." At least it was honest. "Well, now you know, and now it has stopped." "Yes," she said quietly. "The bank has given us 30 days to catch up on the payments, or they will begin foreclosure." "That is not my problem anymore," I said the words, feeling both cruel and necessary. "No, it is not," she agreed, surprising me. "We are looking at options. Richard has applied for better paying jobs." I have an interview tomorrow at a real estate office. As a receptionist." This was unexpected. My mother had not worked since before I was born. Her identity was wrapped up in being a homemaker, in maintaining the perfect house and hosting the perfect dinner parties. "That is a start," I acknowledged, "but it will not be enough to keep the house." "I know," she said, and there was defeat in her voice. "We have contacted a realtor. She is coming next week to assess the property." I looked at my father, who nodded confirmation. "It is the only sensible option," he said. "We should have done it 3 years ago when I lost my job." "Yes, you should have," I agreed. My mother twisted her hands in her lap. "Heidi, I know an apology is not enough. What I said to you that day, and many days before it, there is no excuse." "No, there is not," I said, still not ready to make this easy for her. "I was cruel to you. I have been cruel to you for years." Her voice broke. "I told myself it was for your own good, that I was pushing you to be your best. But the truth is, I was jealous." This admission stunned me into silence. "I gave up my career to raise you children. It was what women of my generation were expected to do. I do not regret having you, but I regret losing myself in the process. And when you became so successful, so independent, doing exactly what I had given up," she shook her head, "it was easier to criticize you than to face my own regrets." It was the most self-aware thing I had ever heard my mother say. Part of me wanted to embrace this moment of vulnerability, to rush toward reconciliation. But the wiser part, the part that had been working with Dr. Martinez knew that one moment of clarity did not undo decades of damage. "I appreciate your honesty," I said carefully, "but I need you to understand that our relationship cannot go back to what it was. I will not be your emotional punching bag anymore. I will not sacrifice my financial security for your comfort. I will not accept criticism disguised as concern." "I understand," she said quietly. "Do you?" "Because these are non-negotiable boundaries for me now. If you cannot respect them, then we will not have a relationship at all." My father reached across the table toward my hand, but stopped short of touching me. "We want to do better, Heidi. Both of us. We want to rebuild what we have broken if you will give us that chance." I looked between them, these flawed human parents of mine. "I cannot make any promises right now. I am still processing everything that happened, not just that day, but throughout my life. I need time and space." "Of course," my father said quickly. "Whatever you need. And I want you both to consider therapy," I added. "Individually and as a couple. There are issues here that go beyond money." My mother's mouth tightened reflexively, but she nodded. "If that is what it takes." "It is a start," I said. "As for the house situation, I cannot and will not resume payments, but I can help you create a financial plan for downsizing. I can connect you with resources for job searching. I can advise you on retirement options. That is what I can offer." "That is more than we deserve," my father said softly. "It is not about deserving," I replied. "It is about what I am willing and able to give while maintaining my own well-being." We talked for another hour, more practically now, about house values in their neighborhood, about my father's resume and interview skills, about what size home they could realistically afford on their reduced income. It was the most adult conversation we had ever had, with no emotional manipulation, no tears, no guilt trips. As we prepared to leave, my mother hesitated, then asked, "Would it be all right if I called you, just to check in occasionally?" "Text first," I said. "Ask if I have time to talk. Respect if I say not right now." She nodded, accepting this boundary. "I will." We parted without hugs or promises, just a tentative acknowledgement that something new might be possible, even if the old was irrevocably gone. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Not healed, not whole, but moving in the right direction. For the first time in my life, I had stood firm in my truth and my worth, and the world had not ended. In fact, it felt like it might finally be beginning. 6 months can change everything or nothing at all. In my case, it changed almost everything. My new condo became truly mine, in ways my previous apartments never had. I painted an accent wall in the living room, that bright teal I had always wanted. I planted herbs on my small balcony. I adopted a cat, a dignified orange tabby named Leo, who greeted me at the door each evening and slept curled against my side each night. My career continued to flourish. With the mental energy no longer consumed by family drama, I found myself more creative in my financial planning approaches, more present with clients, more innovative in my investment strategies. I was promoted to senior advisor with my own team, a position that came with a substantial raise and increased flexibility. Dr. Martinez and I continued our weekly sessions, gradually reducing to bi-weekly as I developed stronger emotional boundaries and healthier coping mechanisms. The panic attacks stopped entirely. The nightmares about my mother criticism faded. The constant background hum of anxiety quieted. "You have done remarkable work," Heidi, Dr. Martinez told me during a session marking our 6-month anniversary of working together. "Many people spend years, even decades, trying to break free from toxic family patterns. You have made tremendous progress in a relatively short time." "It does not feel short," I admitted. "It feels like the longest 6 months of my life." "Growth is painful," she agreed. "But you have not just survived this period. You have transformed through it." My relationship with my parents evolved slowly, with careful steps forward and occasional steps back. My father found a position as a sales manager at a smaller company, making about 60% of his previous salary, but with less stress and more appreciation. He seemed genuinely happier despite the financial adjustment. More surprisingly, my mother not only took the receptionist job but excelled at it. Within 3 months, she had organized the office so efficiently that they offered to pay for her to get her real estate license. At 63, she was embarking on the career she had abandoned for marriage and motherhood 40 years earlier. The younger agents ask me for advice, she told me during one of our now regular Sunday phone calls. They say clients trust me because I have life experience. The pride in her voice was something new, something earned rather than manufactured. It suited her. They sold the Colonial in the suburbs, making enough profit to pay off their credit card debt and put a down payment on a 2-bedroom townhouse closer to the city. It was a third of the size of their previous home, but required far less maintenance and was within their new budget. I do not miss the big house as much as I thought I would, my father confessed when we met for lunch one day. All those rooms we never used, all that stuff we never needed. It feels good to simplify. The most significant change, though, was that my mother began seeing a therapist of her own. It was not at my insistence. She made the decision after breaking down at work one day when a client resembling me came in with her young daughter. I suddenly saw us, you and me, as we were when you were little, she explained. Before I became so critical when you still looked at me with complete trust, and I realized how much I had destroyed. Her therapist diagnosed her with narcissistic tendencies rooted in her own childhood trauma, a pattern she had unwittingly perpetuated. The work was difficult and often painful for her. There were sessions after which she would call me voice raw, from crying to apologize for specific incidents from my childhood that she had finally recognized as harmful. I accepted these apologies cautiously, neither rushing to forgive nor holding on to resentment. Tabid, Dr. Martinez helped me understand that forgiveness was a process, not a single act, and that it was primarily for my own peace rather than my mother absolution. Our new relationship was built on clearer communication and firmer boundaries. I visited them in their new home once a month, no more. We spoke on the phone weekly, but I felt free to end calls that became negative or draining. I no longer automatically said yes to every request, no longer felt responsible for their happiness or security. The strange thing is, my father observed during a rare moment of insight, now that you are not carrying us, we have learned to stand on our own. It has been good for us, as painful as the process was. The hardest lesson for all of us was learning the difference between helping and enabling. I still offered professional financial advice, but I no longer paid their bills. I celebrated their successes, but did not rescue them from the consequences of their choices. I loved them without sacrificing myself in the process. As summer turned to fall and fall to winter, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed in less than a year. The previous Christmas had been tense and performative, with expensive gifts exchanged in the grand house, everyone pretending we were the perfect family. This Christmas would be simpler in their modest townhouse, with homemade gifts and honest conversation. What I have learned, I told Sophia over dinner at my place, is that standing up for myself did not destroy my family. It transformed it into something more authentic. You gave them the opportunity to grow by refusing to stay small, she observed wisely. Exactly. And I gave myself permission to live my own life, not the one my mother had scripted for me. That script had always ended with me, married to a successful man living in a house like theirs, having children who would repeat the cycle. Instead, I was building a different story, one where success was measured by peace rather than possessions, where relationships were based on mutual respect rather than obligation, where love did not require the sacrifice of self. The irony was that by setting those boundaries, by refusing to continue paying the mortgage and enabling their financially unsustainable lifestyle, I had helped my parents find their own strength and independence. My mother was happier working than she had ever been as a homemaker. My father was rediscovering interests and friendships that had been overshadowed by career pressure. We were all in our own ways finally growing up. Sometimes the greatest act of love is not sacrificing everything, but rather allowing others the dignity of facing reality. Sometimes the strongest families are not those that never break, but those that learn how to rebuild differently after breaking. Sometimes the deepest healing comes only after the most painful truths have been spoken aloud. If you have found yourself in a similar situation, trapped in unhealthy family dynamics, or carrying burdens that are not yours to bear, I hope my story offers some encouragement. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary for authentic relationships. Loving someone does not mean sacrificing your well-being for theirs. You can honor your family while still honoring yourself. I would love to hear about your experiences with family boundaries or financial independence in the comments below. Has anyone else discovered that stepping back actually helped their loved ones step up? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more authentic conversations about family dynamics and personal growth. Share it with someone who might be struggling with similar challenges. Thank you for listening, and remember, true love uplifts rather than diminishes. Take care of yourselves and each other.